Welcome to another episode of The Impact of AI, brought to you by AI Time Journal in collaboration with women leaders in data and artificial intelligence. For those of you who I've not met yet, my name is Melissa Drew. I have 27 years of experience in procurement and supply chain and around 17 years of experience working with cognitive technologies. We are absolutely excited today to have Madhuri Panwar. She is a senior data technology leader who develops organizational strategies and business values utilizing data and analytics. She's an expert in monetizing that data with the right data management practice, building actionable insights, and leveraging AI and cognitive technologies to build new business models and customer-centric solutions in order to increase revenue and profitability. Welcome.
First of all, thank you for including me, Melissa. I'm really excited about what you're doing and appreciate including me here.
Great. So let's get started. You have been in this industry for 20 years. We don't often see a lot of women in the data and analytics sciences. But I'd love if you would share with the audience, what's your journey? How did you gain your professional path into the leadership that you have now?
I've got 20 years of experience, and I call myself a passionate business leader with a technology mindset. And I started my career as a consultant with Capgemini, and I've worked with large Fortune 500 companies like Walgreens and Blue Cross Blue Shield. And I always believe that you start with a business problem, leverage data, analytics, and other solutions to make a big impact in the organization. And I've led multiple business transformation using these technologies to make a large scale difference.
So I know, 20 years ago when I was working in the industry, the term artificial intelligence, cognitive technologies, those were not even phrases in the organization. So how, when you look at your professional journey, where did this come into play for you? Where did you start seeing this within your job description and how you built through that?
I implemented a sophisticated store clustering and a product assortment model for a 150 billion retailer. And at that time, nobody even knew that it was machine learning. So, using stats and data was something that was natural. And over 20 years, I've leveraged that technology, and that technology has evolved, obviously, with great computing power and then the large volume of data that we have. And I've also done my master's in AI and ML and sort of leverage my learnings to implement it in the business area and make a big difference in the outcomes.
Brilliant. You have your collaboration with WLDA. So it's WLDA, Women Leaders in Data and Artificial Intelligence. That I understand that role is bringing value, leading others, to lead, working with the next generation.
I'm really, really excited to be part of the WLDA organization. And, there are about 30 plus, super smart women who have used data and analytics in their area. And the one thing unique about it is we are all industry leaders. We have not only, built strategy to implement it, but we've actually executed and enabled outcomes in the organization. And I'm excited to be the founding member of WLDA. And I think we're making great outcomes.
I recently read that, and I'm not sure if this is public, but I recently read that you are going to be teaching at Western. Is that right?
Yep. Yeah, I'm so excited about teaching Northwestern. I got my MBA from Kellogg School of Management, and it's nice to be back in the campus. So I'm teaching a 24-week course on artificial intelligence and blockchain. So I'm excited to leverage my experience, my learning to enable other students and learners to make similar impact in the organizations they're working.
Wow. When I went to college, I was one of the first individuals to get a degree in management information systems. And then, over time, as the technology changes, the universities, they also change. So it sounds like, sounds like Northwestern is really starting to move forward. And you said this was a certification, or is this a degree?
It's a professional program for Northwestern, yes. Yeah, and I think the organizations, the universities have to really think of education really differently, right? Like just to give you an example of fintech, right? The banks are now not just hiring MBAs from Wharton and Northwestern, but they're also looking at, getting engineers and AI leaders in their organization. So the world is changing. And one example is the kids who are, in high school. I think we need to start talking about data and analytics and AI early in the game so that they can, become leaders and know this information upfront.
So in your current role today as a technology leader, what typically are your roles and responsibilities?
One of the exciting advisory role that I'm doing is implementing AI Accelerator. And just a background on that, everybody wants to do AI and become an AI organization, mm-hmm. But in large legacy organization, right, the journey is not just as implementing a new technology, right? It's a lot about people, process, technology, and I'm helping some organization to just do that. So we've got I've got a AI accelerator that enables organization to look at where they are and also move in the journey where they want to use AI and other exciting technologies to make a big difference in their business model.
So what I hear you saying is if I'm a company, I want to start utilizing more artificial intelligence or more cognitive technologies, but I don't really have the infrastructure. I don't have the resources. I don't have a chief data officer. I don't have, a lot of those roles that typically would run that. Then what you're saying is you can come in with this AI accelerator and help them get started, help them build that program.
With my experience in implementing AI and, enabling data across the different organizations, right, I build a toolkit that helps them, right? So the first thing we do is we look at, where the organization is, assess, and then give them a very custom solution in terms of what are their journeys in terms of, customer as well as from a people and process technology perspective and help them achieve where they want to be.
So before we go back to the AI Accelerator, can we dive a little bit deeper into what you typically would do on a day-to-day on your roles and responsibilities?
I played three major roles in any organization, right? The one role is what I call a data integrator, right? A data integrator is where you come in an organization and the data, they don't have the right data. And I help lay out the foundation that enables them to make data as a strategic asset, right? So that includes data governance, improving data quality, and monetizing data. The second role that I played is what I call a business optimizer. And this is where, if the data, once the data is right, you build action-driven insights with predictive and prescriptive analytics. And these solutions have helped the organizations that I've worked with increase cash and have better margins. Third role is what I call a digital innovator. And this is where, I've leveraged AI, machine learning, computer vision to help build new business models and new revenue streams, as well as enable them to differentiate themselves strategically and have that, importance in the market.
One of the things that we've been exploring in these podcast series is the different roles and responsibilities around the chief data officer and the chief analytics officer. And then you've got these, supplemental roles, the chief technology officer, the chief information officer. The role that you've explained, the data integrator, the business optimizer, and the digital innovator, are you seeing that as a chief data officer role or a combination of a chief data officer and a chief analytics officer?
So I've seen it more as a chief analytics officer that has AI, expertise and can make a big difference in the organization. So a lot of times the IT leaders may not have the right bandwidth and the skill sets that they need, and then also the right ownership and the way the role is assigned. I've usually seen these roles report directly to the CEO, where they can really look at across the organization and help evolve and take an organization to the next level.
We're going to circle back now to the AI Accelerator. So you're working as an advisory, collaborating with these organizations who may haven't started yet their AI journey. And this accelerator is really getting them in the first couple steps of the journey, or how far will that accelerator take them?
I wanted to explain the journey that organizations take, right, from when they're exploring to becoming niche players, like the Ubers of the world. And I've seen that the organizations really have to put up a well-structured program to get there, right? So a large part, as you see from this, this is sort of based on the research based on MIT. So a lot of organizations are exploring, and that's where they're like, hey, AI is the new technology that's making a big difference. Let's see what benefits they can have. And then majority of the organization are in either experimenting or formalizing. And this is where, they've hired a few data scientists and experts, and they've built POCs that have shown great results, right? But they're not at a point where they can scale, and that comes with the right investment, the right strategy. And I think the strategy is really important, because if you don't have the right alignment with the overall organization strategy, then you're going to fail and not have the traction. And then optimizing and transforming is where you build a culture of innovation and transformation. You've got the right infrastructure in place. I think KPIs are important. Because AI is not just about a new technology, it's really about transforming how people work, how they take decisions, what are their new models that they are serving to their clients. So I think to reach the stage of being transforming, I think you need to build sort of an ecosystem of people, process, technology, and more, which I can share with you in the next slide. But I think it's really exciting. A lot of organizations are now experimenting and formalizing, and there are leaders who can take them to optimizing and transforming.
In your AI accelerator, where do you feel an organization should start? Like, for example, after they've gone through the exploring phase and they've now decided that they want to start utilizing these technologies. And I ask this question because my background is procurement and supply chain. So I see a lot of, spend visibility, data analytics. I see a lot of, procurement tools, supply chain procurement tools that are really using predictive analytics to help understand that supply chain. But when you're looking at a larger, the larger umbrella of the organization, where are you seeing customers, starting? Where do they start first?
I always look at your customer journey, right? Because ultimately you want to have the right products that sell, right, and increase your margin, the top line and bottom line. And so you always look at your customer journey and look at where you can have the right experiences, the right products, and the right based on what the customers are looking for, right? So I look at three things, right? One is looking at your customer journey. And enhancing the experiences, getting the right products to the right market at the right time. That's one area. The other is your product journey, right? Do you have the right product? Is it placed well? Is it marketed well, right? So your product life cycle or your product journey, I think that's another area to look at. And then the third area that I look at is, where is your company's growth strategies, right? As you look at your year and 5-year strategy, what are your pain points? Are you planning to expand to another country? What are is there a region that's not doing well, right? So then you look at your strategy and your pain points, and then you look at how do I improve, right? So that's where I've seen customer journey, product journey, as well as your strategic priorities.
When you're out there collaborating, what are some of the questions that you get? What are some of the concerns, or just what are some of the questions that you're getting from your customers?
Yeah, I think the one question that I always get is, hey, we built this proof of concept, it's really well. How do I build 500 more such initiatives, right? So scaling the AI is obviously one question I get. The other is, I think the one that you asked for is, how do I, where do I start, right? And I always say, let's start with your strategy and look at where your company wants to grow. And you want to pick initiatives that will move the needle, right? So you never do AI for the sake of doing AI, right? And that's why I call myself a business leader with a technology mindset. And you always come up and say, what problems do you want to solve? And then look at what data you need to solve the problem, and then build the right solution to enable that problem.
Do you ever find that there's resource constraints? Because I'm sitting here, this is great, and I'm thinking of all the companies that maybe I had worked for where it would have been such a huge value to have somebody come in and help with that strategy and planning. But then I'm thinking about it from my perspective, what kind of resources would I need? Like I'm all in and I love this and I'm done the exploring and I want to get through the experimenting and I'm excited to get, to the formalizing. What kind of headcount do I need to start looking at?
That's a good question and a segue to my second slide, right? So let me walk you through what an AI operating model is, right? And this is sort of a holistic perspective of how do you scale AI initiative, right? So you always start with why, right? You don't want to build anything ground up unless you understand what is your strategy and how ambitious do you want to get? How do you align with your business stakeholders? What is your approach and how do you get the sponsorship, right? So that's the why. And the who part, right, to what you talked about is really exciting, right? And a lot of organizations where they have to scale AI projects, they look at organization design. Is it better to have centralized team? Is it better to have decentralized or maybe a hub or spoke or federated model, right? So the talent model, what is your team structure? How do you enable the adoption, right? So those were the who aspect. And then there's the how, which consists of the process, right? The data, the technology platform, and then what I call enablement and ethics. So let me sort of walk you through this, right? The process is once you know the right initiatives, you've got the right people assigned, then you look at what's the best process. And I always say begin with end in mind, right? What problems are you trying to solve? And what is the right KPI and the measurement associated with it? And, AI projects are very different from maybe, a project that was done in Java, right? You need to have a different mindset and a different project life cycle. And, I always believe in delivery excellence. So AI is all about, building a prototype, improving it and enhancing it across. So that's the people side. And data side, maybe we can talk about data, which is my favorite topic, having the right data. And then you also need to have the right data platform. And the data platforms are like, how do you, when you build these models, how do you make sure there's no model chaos, right? A lot of times I've seen organizations, they build multiple forecasting models and they don't have a cohesive way of how they talk to each other. So ML ops is another of my favorite topic. And then, the other thing is enablement, right? How do you, when you scale AI initiatives, you not only have to have the right governance, but also a culture, right? A culture of innovation, a culture of failing fast, a culture of learning from the mistakes. Experiential learning is really important. And then also building a community, right? So as you build these citizen data scientists, how do you ensure that people are engaged, they know the art of the possibility, and they ask the right questions to solve and to provide the right solution. And then I think ethics is really important, right? It's the data and garbage in, garbage out, wrong data, biased outcome, right? So it's important to have the right policies and ensure that you can explain the model and the model has no bias, right? So this is sort of a comprehensive model that is built, and there is an assessment associated with this. And then also based on where the organization is, build a very customized roadmap to take them from experimenting to really formalizing and optimizing organization. And to answer your question, I think Melissa, on talent, right? Talent is my favorite topic, right? Important to have the right people, right? If you don't have the right data scientists, if you don't have the data engineers, then the project will fail. So I always like to, in where I've worked before, I always, build relationship with the universities, get the interns, and then keep the talent engaged and excited with best projects, learnings, and then, fun things that they can do to get excited about what they are doing and thrive in the organizations that they're going to work.
This is really comprehensive and it's very well thought out. Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing this with us. You'd mentioned that data was one of your topics that you really enjoyed talking about. I would also like to talk a little bit about the data component of this. In the industry, when you read some articles and you talk to folks and you read what's going on with, Instagram, a lot of the feedback is the hesitancy that even if you're collecting the data, that the data may not always be right. And I heard you briefly mention, the bias of the data or the chaos of the data. I'd really love if we could just dive deeper into understanding how are you ensuring the accuracy and the confidence in that data?
I'll give you the example, right? When you're trying to solve a data problem, you always talk about why, right? And in some organizations that I've worked with, a retailer, their problem was empty shelves, right? They did not want to have holes in their shelves. And we found out that it was a data problem, not so much that they didn't have the right product, right? So it always comes back to understanding what the problem is, looking at all the data that is related to the problem, and then getting the right ownership and stewardship across so that they're responsible for managing the data. And then in the world of AI with data bias, I think you have to have more sources, right? New sources of data, third party, getting the data from third party to make sure that your data is comprehensive and exhaustive.
Would that be pulling in like data from third party tools and applications as well as, so oh, you're shaking your head. So it's supplementing what you already have with the external data. And that's another way to minimize that data bias that you were talking about.
Yeah, and I think if you want to look at the data bias, right? So when you're predicting, right? So I'm being a little technical here, but if you have a classification model, right, and you have response, you look at what percent of your data is balanced, right? So to give you an example of fraud detection, right? If all your data is there's no fraud, right? If 80% of your trained data is that if there's no fraud, then your model is going to be biased, right? So it's always important to have biased data, data that's not biased, and balanced data. And sometimes you have to build data to make the data balanced. And I've seen organizations where they use either third party or they build their data on their own to ensure that they have biased data. And I've seen some organization, they had a certain customer base and they decided to expand their customer base and reach to a customer that they had previously marketed just to make sure that they get additional data for their models.
So as we dive into, if we go to that layer right below the bias and how to, create the accuracies and the confidence, it really comes down to the master data.
And I think master data is another of my favorite topic.
You've got so many favorite topics. I love it.
I'm a data person and I'm also excited about, what how master data has evolved, right? So I've done what is called master data 1.0, and now there's the master data 2.0. And, master data is about products, customer and suppliers. And, back in the days, and I'm talking about 2005, 10, right? It was about, getting the data right. And there were, hundreds of attributes and the data was not so large, right? And managing master data was a different, the focus was more on getting the data right, getting the compliance, making sure that the data is available for the analytics. And I believe master data 2.0 is all about looking at 360 degree of your customer, and your customer information not just comes from your ERP or your CRMs, but it comes from social media and it comes from IoT. Like there could be multiple sources of that data. And then the customer data becomes complex. Managing the data and the ownership of customer data may not reside in your organization, right? It could be a third party or it could be, customers themselves. And then that's where, data becomes complicated. And I've actually helped a startup company leverage data as a service to help monetize that data and actually make a new business model and a new source of revenue in one of the healthcare startups that I've supported with. So I think master data is evolving, and especially with the need of analytics and AI and machine learning, it's important to have the right data, the clean data, to make sure that the models produce the right outcomes.
So I have to ask this: why is data so exciting for you? Because I'm sure some people in the audience are like, what? Yeah. So what's the excitement?
I think data is oxygen, I would say, right? Data is oxygen, and AI is sort of the enabler to produce, to help transformation, right? So if you think of a company like Facebook or Uber or Netflix, right? All these companies are data-rich companies, and they've leveraged data to have the right insights to produce the right products for them, personalize the services for the customers, and really drive value. So I feel like, so data and ML is the new oxygen that can really take the organization to the next level. I've seen a large organizations saying, I don't want to be, I know what I'm doing, but I want to be a health, like, so give you an example. They don't want to be a healthcare organization. They want to be a data and AI organization that does healthcare, right? So the organizations are really looking at, what are their core values and what are their core services, and how do they want to be different in this market? Especially, I think pandemic has played a huge role in, getting people used to all the, like I've used Venmo to do cash transaction. I haven't written a check in 5 years, and especially last year, right? So I think the customers are looking for more experience and digitization, and I think data and AI is sort of the foundation that's fueling and in giving us better products and better services.
I'm all in. Like I hear your passion. I'm excited now. One of the things that we talked about, early on was women leadership in data and analytics. We started to touch on it earlier, but as I'm hearing you and your excitement around data, I'd like to know what you're doing to help really educate and bring forward the next generation of women in the AI leadership.
That's a great question. I'm really passionate about it, right? According to the stats, right, only 25% of women are in technology, even though half the workforce is women. And I believe that there's a lot of opportunity for women to be in the data and technology field, not only because there's a lot of opportunities, but I think they can make a real difference in the strategic way the companies run. And that's why I joined. I'm really excited about WLDA because, WLDA is an organization that serves that purpose of supporting women and bringing women who are leaders in this area, and also helping to mentor other women, right? So that's really exciting. And also, to give you an example, I have a 10-year-old, and she's learning Python, which is really exciting. And I believe that it's really important for us, especially women leaders, to tap the women, tap the girls, as they are in schools and graduating, to teach them the new technologies so that they can become the leaders, especially in this world in the next 10, 20 years. AI and data and analytics are going to be the way organizations are run, right? So that you see, supply chain organization full of data scientists, the inventory planners and the logistic leaders, but you're seeing new technology and new talent in multiple organizations. And I think we have to prepare the workforce, future workforce, to get the right skills so that they can get a competitive advantage, especially women, so that they can know the avenues and progress in their career and in their lives.
So I have a follow-up to that. Why do you think, you mentioned only 25% of women are in these technology? Why? Like, do you have because you've been in this for a long time. Do you have a point of view as to maybe why it's still so low?
Each areas in the organization can do the part, right? So, starting with the universities, right? When the girls are graduating, right, a lot of they may not be encouraged to take the technology and the data-driven courses in the universities. Maybe there aren't so many courses, and our girls are not exposed to it, and they may think it's maths and it's very tough and it's complicated, and let me do something else, right? So, I believe these technologies are not tough. I think we can make them fun and interesting for the girls so that they can say, hey, that's what I want to do in my life, right? So I think starting early, making it fun, making it as accessible to them. And I think there's a gap there. And then organizations are probably not tapping the right talent, right? There's a bias there's more men selected for these jobs, and I believe that there's an opportunity that I think the HR division in the organization, as well as the hiring managers, can be more proactive and take a more active role in getting the right women. And then once they're in the organization, I think WLDA is a great organization to be part of, where you see when you get mentored by other women who have actually gone through this. So I believe that starting with the universities to the hiring practices, and then making sure that they're nurtured across their career is something that we all can play a big part in the organization.
I've never shared this, but when I was in college, getting my master's of information science, the teacher one day said, "How many of you guys want to be a programmer when you walk out of the door here?" I was the only one who didn't raise their hand. Like, I didn't want to be a programmer. I don't want to do that. Sure enough, I ended up becoming a programmer just out of, circumstance. And several years later in 2004, I'm writing the models, to support the machine language for an application. So it wasn't, something that I sought out. I had the background and the knowledge, but it wasn't something I wanted to do. But I'm actually really excited that I did it. So I can resonate with the story. It's even though you're getting the education in the universities, you're not getting a lot of that support when you step out of the university.
And I think a lot of people sort of say that's a nerd job for it's too complicated. It's something, and I think we have to talk about how exciting it is. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of fun when you use these technologies and create outcomes for the organization. And I think it's really prospective too. There's great prospect, and I think organizations are looking for more and more leaders. And I think women play a big role in this area.
So for folks like me, and for those of the rest of the folks that are listening right now, what are some of the things that you can recommend that I can do right now to start helping develop the next generation?
Large companies, right, need to tap talent young, right? I know that a lot of organizations like Google has started their own universities and made freely available for all the people, right? So large technology companies have to do their part. We have to do our part of educating our kids. I think if we start with our kids and our family, right, that's a big network, right? So I'm, for example, my daughter, I've set up a cohort, and all the girls who want to learn Python, right, they join once a month, right? So it can be through our social network, it can be through our professional network, and then also I think volunteering is important, and going in, and I think universities have to open up where they can get industry leaders. I'm certainly looking for where you bring different leaders, and you get excited about what the leader has done, what the leaders accomplished, so that they can be more role models and people can look up to it and learn from them.
All right. So thank you very much. This was exciting. I love the conversation. You brought some really good depth, some really good thought leadership. Thank you again for your time today.
Thank you for inviting me. I think this is exciting, and I look forward to more of such connections.